And as you think about sort of like all of these challenges and all of these technologies that are being developed, I kind of think about the world as the military and its requirements, the large defense primes, the Boeings and the Lockheeds of the world, and then the startup ecosystem. How do you see the three of those working together to create the next generation of
Well, I
technology?
am a big proponent of the latter element of that, which is, of course, the startup ecosystem, because my sense has always been, having been on the receiving end of a lot of this stuff, having been the individual or overseeing the individuals who are putting requirements on the system to start the whole process, if it's not already ongoing, and watching how slow it can be if it's just driven at the pace of the material requirement system, requests for proposals, proposals submitted, winnowing down select, and just endless wrangling back and forth. And now, obviously, that's necessary for some of the really major end items. But if that's not how you're going to get innovation into the military and defense and security writ large ecosystem, that's got to come from something that is more agile. And it has been great to see the partnerships renewed, frankly, between government writ large, so not just defense, but also CIA, other intelligence agencies, Homeland Security, and even beyond that, with the world of innovation, which took a serious hit in the wake of the Snowden revelations. Those were enormously damaging to the relationships that we had enjoyed, especially in the wake of the 9/11 attacks. I could call, as again, a senior military leader or as the CIA director, the CEO of any company. They would answer the phone and they would do the very best that they could within the limits of the law, obviously, but sometimes pushing the envelope a bit as well, or at least expediting the process to help us. And in the wake of the Snowden revelations, those relationships were severely bruised. We saw some cases in which certain companies, major companies, I think it was Microsoft, that actually part of its workforce refused to work on some highly specialized night vision goggles and so on. And you realize that is going to be very, very damaging. But then what we saw is some companies specifically created just with the intent of supporting the Department of Defense. Palmer Luckey's company in particular, I think, stands out, but a number of others in the ecosystem as well. And you're seeing what can happen. Now, the problem is, of course, as they get more successful, what is often the case is that Lockheed will gobble them up, or one of the others, Raytheon or whatever it is now called. Again, the big primes are always on the lookout for these. So you've got to just constantly be refreshing this ecosystem. And of course, finding those that can really take from concept to produce reality. And again, I think that ecosystem has really blossomed in recent years. And I think it will be helped enormously, again, by the fact that it's not just the US, but countries all around the world are spending more on defense than they have ever, including some very important countries, very large economies that had not spent that much on defense for quite a period of time. And again, Germany and Japan would stand out in this regard, as others are continuing to increase their spending as well in response to this enormous array of challenges that I've described. Maybe I should talk very briefly here also about the government sector, if you will, the government efforts to promote innovation as well. I think those on this event will know that there's probably never been as much spending to support a variety of different schemes for innovation. I have always been disappointed, however, that there has not been the replication in each of the military services, because, of course, that's where the money is. It's not at the OSD level or the Pentagon mothership level. It's in each of the services, and huge sums, of course, each service dwarfs the entire intelligence community, just to give you an example. But they've never replicated what we did, starting with the CIA, with the establishment of In-Q-Tel, which is, of course, a federally funded, independent, nonprofit venture capital firm that actually gets to keep the profits that it makes, and it enables it to do something that none of these other innovation elements in the military services or OSD, in the case of, say, DARPA, because it enables them to attract and then retain the really best and brightest in the innovation world. Yes, they're still not making quite what they would make in Silicon Valley, but they're working on missions, on tasks that are really rewarding, working directly with great people in the military or in the CIA and other intelligence agencies. In the case of In-Q-Tel, I've tried to encourage different services and also OSD to do something like this, and they just can't seem to get to it. Now, to be fair, this requires legislation. The government was very supportive of In-Q-Tel. It has allowed it to continue, and it has done incredibly well. You know, the first $1 million size investment in Palantir, for example, was from In-Q-Tel. That alone has enabled it to do extraordinarily well. And so, as an example, the CEO of In-Q-Tel, when I was the director of the CIA, I think earned at least 5 and probably 6 or more times what I earned. And I was fine with that because, again, that's how we were able to keep someone for, I think he ended up staying nearly 15 years. And his longstanding deputy has just stepped up to be the CEO. So again, I'd love to see that model embraced, and again, provided the congressional authorization and appropriation to enable an experiment with that in the services. Because in lieu of that, what you have is essentially the services and then DARPA and a few others just giving money away. And as you all know, it's very, very different to have a stake in the success of an investment as opposed to just handing it out and hoping that it's going to do good for the institution that you're part of.
That's a great segue, sir, to something we spend a lot of time on, which is that crossover to non-kinetic tech that still has very significant defense applications that may be more in the DARPA realm than explicitly the In-Q-Tel or other realms, where the government actually does have a very significant stake in de-risking that technology, but the applications for government use may not be obvious to those that are outside of the ecosystem. Have you given any thought to some technologies that you're particularly excited about in the future that would fall into that non-kinetic realm?
Yeah, I think there's a ton of it. I mean, just think about what a variety of different aerial drones are doing outside the defense sector. You know, they're running high tension wires to validate them. They're conducting a variety of different law enforcement use cases. They're running over tunnels. Again, you can inspect inside buildings. Again, the use cases of that technology are just extraordinary, depending on what you hang from them, how big or small they are, how well they are equipped to not bump into walls and survive and so forth. But no, I think the use cases are extraordinary when it comes to the civilian sector and what they're enabling to be done in a whole host of different cases. And it's really just a question of imagination. Can people imagine how, you know, what are the next use cases? I should note, as you know, Alex, I'm a personal venture capitalist, if you will, as are many of the partners at KKR, and have invested in 27 different startups over the years, in addition to the some of the smaller investments that I've also participated in inside KKR. And, you know, one of the tests always, many of them multiple rounds, and at least 3, I think, are unicorns. In each case, you know, what you're evaluating is not just the quality of the strategic leadership of the founder, and if still CEO or whoever it is that's leading that particular firm, and the quality of the big idea and the technology, et cetera. It's also your sense as to whether or not that leadership can identify the additional use cases and then get to them before the competition does, of course, and ideally ensure that there's a reasonable barrier to entry because of the sophistication of what it is that they're doing. But yeah, no, I think the limits are just, they are unlimited. And that's before we get into unmanned ground systems and a variety of other use cases in those areas as well.